Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Squatch and Such. I'm Dylan Armett, and I'm here with Jude Kovac. As always, Jude, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I have my Bigfoot saw me, but nobody believed him mug. I'm drinking my coffee out of that, so that's pretty cool. But how are you doing?
I'm doing great. So everyone, today we are going to be going over the best and worst evidence for Bigfoot. The best and worst field evidence, videos, all that. We're your hosts, and this is Squatch and Such.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. And before we get started, we just want to give a little disclaimer, and say that all evidence is good evidence. But right now, we're just talking about the strongest evidence for Bigfoot and the weakest evidence for Bigfoot. So we're not saying that some evidence should be discredited. We're not saying that at all. All evidence is good evidence, but some evidence isn't quite as credible as other pieces of evidence. So to start off for worst evidence, we're going to talk about the worst footage for Bigfoot. And before we get started, I just want to talk about what do you think makes a footage credible? To me and Dylan personally, it's a clear picture, details that you can see. So, for example, in the Patterson Gimlin film, you can see multiple muscle groups in it, and the environment that's in. The environment's very important. If it's squatchy, if it's wooded, all those factors are very important in terms of is a video credible or not. And third, is the Bigfoot acting normal? So a Bigfoot, you can tell if a video is fake, if a Bigfoot is doing something like performing jumping jacks or something like that. A normal Bigfoot is usually normal Bigfoot evidence is very boring. Usually it's just a Bigfoot walking across a road or something like that.
It's very rarely doing something interesting.
It's very rarely doing most of the time it's just standing there. There's not many videos. I don't think there's any videos of a Bigfoot killing anything as far as I'm aware of. So that's just the basic what makes Bigfoot footage credible. And so the first thing, Dylan and I have differing opinions on this, but I personally think that the Memorial Day footage isn't very credible. For example, the footage isn't very clear. And in the video, the Bigfoot's just running across the field. But I'm like, why would a Bigfoot just be running across the field for no reason? You can't really see any details. Sasquatches, when you look at them, they look like they're gliding. And then this one in the video is bouncing more like a jogger would. But also it's at a campsite.
If you don't know what the Memorial Day footage is, it is a video of a supposed Sasquatch running across a field. So like Jude said, we do have differing opinions. I think it is a real video of a Bigfoot, and he does not. The reason I think it is most likely a Sasquatch is because although it does bob up and down a little bit, the fact it is running in the video from one side of the field to another. The reason I think it's normal for it to be running in that situation is because in the video there is a forest line on both sides of the field, and it is possible that the Bigfoot is trying to run without being seen from one side to another. I am not saying it is 100% real. I am not trying to say Jude is not a trustworthy person. I'm not trying to dismiss his beliefs. But in my opinion, I think it is a Sasquatch.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think it's very credible because I don't know why the Sasquatch would be running across the field. I feel like if a Bigfoot was trying to be elusive, I feel like running might give it away. Because if you see something, for example, Bigfoots are black. So, or some of them are red, very rarely. Some of them are white, very rarely. And a lot of them are brown or black. So if you just see something way off in the distance, and if it's just walking, chances are you're not really going to notice it. But in this video, the Bigfoot was running. And I feel like if something's running, it's going to be a lot easier to spot. than something that's just walking, especially at that far distance. And another reason I think that's not very credible is the environment it's in. Yes, it's in a very wooded environment. So if they're, but it's at the same time, it's at a campsite and there's a lot of people around. And I feel like Bigfoots, they don't really like hanging around spots where there are a lot of people. But that's just my opinion on it.
And we might do a future episode all about the Memorial Day footage. You guys can look
The
at it
Bigfoot
and you can
files.
email us, tell us what you think. We'd love to hear from you. Anyway, moving on, we are going to talk about the worst field evidence for Bigfoot. Um, if these are paired, it's just something to know. If these are paired with more evidence, they could be legit. But if it's just these signs, then it's not very strong evidence. Um, if you're out and you find what looks like a hunting blind made by a Sasquatch, don't jump and straight out just believe that it's made by a Sasquatch, because
Hmm.
anyone can make a hunting blind. They're not just Sasquatch exclusive, because um, people use them sometimes too, and um, although it could have been made by a Sasquatch, it probably wasn't, if that's all you found. Um, if there's no evidence of Bigfoot in the area, like if there's no sightings that have been reported in that area, or if you haven't seen
Hmm.
anything like bark stripped from trees, that could be another sign that there's a Sasquatch in the area. But if there's nothing like that and it's not known, or there's no reports of a Bigfoot in that area, then that's something to look out for as well.
Yeah, and just for those of you who may just be getting interested in Sasquatch evidence and field research, a Bigfoot hunting blind, if you don't know, is essentially a bunch of sticks that a Bigfoot will stack up against a tree or something like that to keep them hidden from sight if they are hunting for deer or other wildlife that they eat. And what Dylan was talking about a second ago, bark stripped from trees. Sasquatches, they are very, especially male Sasquatches, are extremely territorial. And
Hmm.
a sign that they mark their territory with is stripping bark off of trees. And if it's just one tree and and you can't find any other bark stripped from trees anywhere, chances are is that tree is just dying or it has a disease or something. But if you see multiple trees, and Dylan and I have been Sasquatch hunting in a place, and we have had very good luck in this one spot. And there's this one area where bark is just stripped from like every other tree, very high up in the air, and or in the tree rather. But Sasquatches, they use it to mark their territory.
Hmm.
Um, so and that's just how other Sasquatches will know. Okay, this is not. This is another male's territory, and sometimes they will fight for territory. It's very, very rare,
Hmm.
but I don't think anyone's really even seen them, but I've heard that before. Some people assume that they will do it because other animals have done it before. But another thing that isn't very credible with field research is broken trees. For those of you who don't know, some Sasquatches, they do calls, they do wood knocks and all that. But some of them, if they do get mad, they will break a tree um, and essentially saying, "Hey, get off my territory. You're on my territory. I want you gone." And unless the tree is snapped, if the tree is very big around, first of all, chances are is the Bigfoot did not snap it. If it's like a massive oak tree, because Bigfoots, yeah, they're strong, but they're not going to be ripping apart oak trees that are like 5 feet around. It's usually going to be trees that will make enough noise that you can hear it, but it's not going to be huge. So also, broken
Hmm.
trees, they could very well be natural. And
Hmm.
unless it's paired with other evidence, it's just not very strong.
Yeah. The next thing we're going to talk about is the worst arguments for Bigfoot. So, the most common argument that I've heard is, doesn't it just make sense? Like, most people can say, no, it doesn't make sense, because most
Mhm.
of the time it doesn't. You have to provide a lot of evidence and go into detail for it to make sense. But just saying with no evidence at all whatsoever doesn't it just make sense that Bigfoot would be real, or does it just make sense that I have seen a Bigfoot? Because most of the time it doesn't, and most people will say that it doesn't. Another common one is look at the evidence. You have to actually provide evidence to people directly, for them to believe you and not think that you're crazy. If you if you're just talking to your friend about Bigfoot and you're like, just look at the evidence, they don't know the evidence most likely unless you're giving it to them.
And even if you are giving it to them, you really should show them, because if you're just talking about it, chances are is they're not going to believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for example, if you're talking about footprints, right? And you have to say, well, Ray Wallace, he was doing these flat-footed footprints, but then there was this one Bigfoot that was real who made footprints with a divot in the middle. If you're just talking about that, the person you're talking to is going to be like, how do you know that footprint wasn't real? You have to go into very detailed, you have to be very specific about what evidence you're talking about. If you do
Mm-hmm.
say, look at the evidence. And it's best if you can find pictures or books or references to show them that it is real, to show them the evidence that you're talking about. And another thing that people do is give personal experiences, which I'm not a big fan of. I personally don't like talking about Sasquatch personal experiences
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because people never take me seriously. And people, if you tell someone, they're either going to think you're lying, exaggerating, think you saw a bear, or you're just straight up nuts. And there's no proof behind your stories either. Even if you know someone really well, why would they believe, if they don't believe in Bigfoot, that you saw big, especially if you just start talking about it? Some
Yeah.
people will also think you just want attention. And just like um, Jonathan said last week, 90% of Bigfoot stories are fake. So it's going to be fairly hard to prove that your story is real,
Yeah.
compared, because there's like a 1 out of 10 chance that it's going to be real.
Yeah.
Not because 100%, 90% of them are 90% of them are fake.
Yeah. So now we're going to move on to the next section, the best evidence for Bigfoot. So the first thing you can think about is a credible source. Think about, where did this story come from? If the source is something, or it comes from something or someone you can't trust, it's probably not a real story. But if the
Wikipedia.
source is credible, like a known cryptozoologist or a friend you can trust, and is not going to make something up like that,
Hmm.
then the story is more believable and more credible. A video or picture of the Bigfoot with distinct, noticeable features and details is also a really good way to provide evidence. And if you see that, it gives it lots more credibility,
Hmm.
because if you can make out the features and that's what a Sasquatch looks like, and this, if it wouldn't be a suit, if it's like, skin tight, because a lot of Bigfoot suits are like baggy and everything like that. Like we've talked about before on the show, Jude.
Hmm.
Um, because like in the Patterson Gimlin film, you can see muscles, like Jude talked about. Um, and if the person was staying calm while telling the story and not going into too much detail, because although some detail is good, giving too much detail can make the story seem rehearsed, or yeah, and therefore less credible. Um,
Yeah. And a second ago, you were talking about the Patterson film. And for those of you who don't know, I really like the Patterson film. But yeah, no, but you're talking about the Patterson film a second ago and how you can see muscles and other features on the Sasquatch, on the female Sasquatch. And so I think in terms of Bigfoot videos, the Patterson Gimlin film is easily the best Bigfoot video there is. But if you pair that with the Independence Day film, so the facial features of the Bigfoot look exactly like they do in the Independence film, in the
hmm
Independence Day film.
Yeah.
They look pretty much exactly the same. So I think if you don't just talk about the Patterson-Gimlin film, but you pair it with the Independence Day film, which, for those of you who don't know, is basically just another video of a Sasquatch running. Not running, yeah, it's running, but it's not doing
It's
anything
going off
interesting like
fairly,
killing it.
yeah.
It's going at a fairly fast speed, and is just trying to avoid being caught. But it looks exactly like the Patterson-Gimlin film does, so I think that's probably the best evidence for films of Bigfoot, videos of Bigfoot
Right.
rather.
Yeah. And the next thing we're going to talk about is telling the story. Like I said before, staying calm is a good way to back up your story. Telling the story in a rush can make it seem like you're trying to make a point. And it's good to make the story come out as natural as possible rather than, guys, I saw a Bigfoot and I don't know that it's a Bigfoot. And that makes it seem a lot less believable.
Right.
Another way is having a witness. Like if you were there, if you were there with someone during the sighting or experience, or having them vouch for you, it'll seem like a lot less like you were crazy, because there's another person with you. Either that or you will both seem crazy. But yeah.
Yeah. So the witness can definitely go either way. Another thing is bring evidence. So if you have a video recording or picture, that should hold enough evidence, just in general, if you're talking to a person who's open-minded enough. And another thing is to just be open about ideas of what it could be. Just say, it was Bigfoot, man. It could make you just sound weird, and your story is going to sound very, very unbelievable if you just say it was, because when someone says Bigfoot, most people don't even know what Bigfoot looks like. Most of them think that's a 30-foot tall ape who screams in the
Yeah.
woods. Even if you've seen Finding Bigfoot, most people do not know what, like, there's some people on Finding Bigfoot. There was one person who said they saw a Bigfoot that was 14 feet tall.
Yeah, 14 feet tall, and it was coming at them like it
Yeah,
was
and
getting
it
ready
was
to attack.
Bigfoots don't really attack people, is the thing too.
Yeah, not at
But
all.
yeah, no, so just don't say it was Bigfoot. Please, I'm
Yeah.
begging you, if you're talking to someone.
Um, the best footage evidence for Bigfoot is probably, in my opinion, accidental footage. For example, if you're walking in the woods recording a video and then there's a Bigfoot in the video by accident, that can seem, I think that's really good evidence, and I think most of the time those videos are real.
Mhm. Yeah, another thing is sound. So
Yeah.
if a video shows Bigfoot and it's fine and dandy, but then there's a Bigfoot and then you can hear it making sound, it's more believable, incredible. It's rare, but it can happen. Usually there's just a video or there's a sound.
Yeah.
For example, a howl in the background, a wood knock, or just a video of a Sasquatch. And part of the reason that we don't have a video and a sound, uh, at least more of them, is because if you're Sasquatching in the middle of the night, you're usually using a thermal camera,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very rare that you ever see a Bigfoot. Very, very rare, because there's only like 6,000 of them across North America, and that's including Canada too. And Canada's bigger than the continental U.S., so it's just bigger than, I guess, bigger than all the U.S. in general. But then, what was I talking about? Right, films. No, I was talking about sound and films, right? No, but if there's the reason we've never had a video with the sound in it is partially because if you're videoing a Bigfoot, they're hoping that you don't see them.
Mm-hmm.
They know you're there, but they're hoping that you don't see them, and they don't want to give themselves away. But what Bigfoots will do is, if someone is videoing a Bigfoot and there's two Bigfoots, what sometimes happens is a Bigfoot in the back will make a sound to get your attention away from that Bigfoot in front of you, so that Bigfoot can get out of the way while you're distracted by that other Bigfoot. You turn around, that Bigfoot's gone. When you turn around, that Bigfoot leaves, and they're just both out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
A lot of times it'll be to get the young out of harm's way.
mm-hmm.
Most of the time the male Sasquatch, the male adult Sasquatch will make a noise to get your attention so that behind you or out of your line of sight they can get the young out of the way because they know that you're there to find them. Because if you're out there in the woods and you have your thermal cameras and your red lights and everything and you're looking for them, they know you're there
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to be seen, and you know they're there and you want to see them, and so they're going to try their best to get out of your way.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with that, that is actually way more common than you think to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Where a Bigfoot will distract you, and like you said, just get the young out of harm's way. But yeah, there's a lot of reports like that.
Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps this episode up. Thanks for listening, everyone. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Squatch and such, and you can find us on YouTube as well. We started making videos and posting those. You can email us questions and guest requests and feedback at squatchandsuch@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you guys. Happy Valentine's Day, and we'll catch you all in the next episode.
All right, bye, guys.